I'm joining us now from the Pakistani capital is political analyst Javed Rana. Javed, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Umar.
Javed, we've all been witnessing this visit by Prime Minister Netanyahu to the United States where many different things were discussed. But what I want to touch upon is the nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize. It's not just Israel. Pakistan has also nominated President Trump for the Peace Prize. Don't you think it's like, Mussolini nominating Adolf Hitler for the Nobel Peace Prize?
The fantastic combination, I think. And you have said it in all. Basically, war criminal who was formally declared by International Criminal Court, his arrest warrants have been issued. International Court of Justice has issued its interim order about this preliminary findings of genocide. A man who has killed, I would say, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians during last 2 years. He is nominating Donald Trump, who has been advocating expelling of millions of Palestinians from their own land in Gaza. And he is not clear, ambiguous on whether or not to allow Israel, the apartheid state, to also expel people from the West Bank, who are 5 million. He has been nominated by head of apartheid state of Israel. This is hilarious. In case of Pakistan, the problem with Pakistan's military generals have been, and they've been very smart, and they thought that with what we can please Donald Trump, and I think they came with a lot of proposals like rare earth minerals, and then what happened between India and Pakistan, I think then the military generals also politically exploited that situation to please Donald Trump and gave him that, I would say, a kind of a credit which partially he might have deserved, but it looks like exaggeratedly the military said that it is your dealing which saved the two countries from going to the nuclear war. Partially it is true, but again, Pakistan's that decision was very odd, and it was perceived in the Middle East, more particularly in Muslim countries and in occupied Palestinian territory, as betrayal to the cause of the Palestinians.
Javed, do you think Javed, do you think there was a lot of pressure on the Pakistani government to nominate Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize, or was it like a decision made in unison?
I think, to the best of my understanding, it is everybody knows the temperament of Donald Trump, that he wants to be flattered all the time. Everybody knows that Donald Trump has been very desperate to win a Nobel Peace Prize. Everybody knows that he's been talking against his predecessor, Obama, that he never deserved the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, I think that to that extent, he's right, because Obama initiated so many wars against Muslims. But at the same time, he also doesn't deserve this Nobel Peace Prize. I think the very nomination, particularly coming from Israel, it should be the sole criteria to disqualify him to win the Nobel Peace Prize. It does not make sense at all. Essentially, Netanyahu has taken a cue from Pakistan. I mean, he thought that this is what Donald Trump is looking for. This is the bigger issue. Now, what is at the heart of the discussion between Donald Trump and Netanyahu? I mean, that is where both have the disagreement. And that disagreement is revolving around on how to expel Palestinians from Gaza. Because their Arab allies have been saying that they need some kind of face saving. Netanyahu is not giving that face saving, and I think that is why there have been 2 meetings between Netanyahu and Donald Trump during last 24 hours. But I think that did not yield a result. But both leaders obviously have a consensus, and that consensus revolve around that these Palestinians need to be expelled, and then in a manner that they are not basically migrated to a place where they get together. They should be divided among in small segments of populations and just sent to the different countries. Now, vibes coming from Washington suggest that perhaps some Arab allies have given some kind of a discreet assurance that some of the Palestinians would be accommodated. I think in that context, nominating Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize, it's ridiculous to say the least, and hilarious. I doesn't make sense Now, look at the scale of the number of the people who have been killed in the Ukraine by Russia. That is probably around 30, 40,000 during 3 years long war. And look at the size of the Ukraine. It's far bigger. And then 365 square kilometer area is just Gaza. Total population is 2.4 million. And out of those 4 millions, hundreds of thousands of people have been killed. Some estimates are that there are nearly 400,000 people are under the rebels. But what we certainly know that the 60,000 people have almost been killed, and 130,000 people have been wounded. 90% of the Gaza have been completely destroyed. And that man who has done it, it is Netanyahu. He is nominating Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. It's a complete nonsense.
Javed, some world leaders have refrained from using the word genocide to describe the Israeli actions in the occupied Gaza Strip. And what's worse is that the Israeli government is now pushing Palestinians to places like Rafah and asking them to, settle into humanitarian corridors or humanitarian areas. Now, the Israeli government has termed it humanitarian corridors or, safe zones, but to me, this is more like a concentration camp because we saw how Palestinians, when they were searching for food and basic humanitarian aid, they were forced to line up in queues and then take those deliveries from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Now, what do you think about this, Javed? Don't you think this is another form of genocide which the Israeli government has been exacerbating for the last few months?
Just little clarification. The countries who have been using to skip the word of genocide on Gaza, that's pure for the political reasons, because now we have seen the initial findings from the International Criminal Court and ICJ, which means that legally now everybody can say it is a genocide. And your second part of the question extremely important. These so-called safe zones are the most unsafe zones. People are asked to go to the certain areas, which they call as safe zones, and then there are airstrikes. People then are killed in their dozens, in sometimes in hundreds. So, and then this has been the typical pattern of Israel's air forces. And then we have seen that these safe zones have been changing from time to time. Every next day, they keep on changing it. So basically, they have successfully made Gaza unlivable, forcing people to leave Gaza. Now, problem with the people in Gaza is that no country is willing to accept them. This is the biggest problem. And now when the ceasefire talks are going on between apartheid state and Hamas through Qatar and Egypt, the problem is that the Israeli forces, they don't want to basically quit Rafah crossing. And they want to control the movements of the Palestinians. And in similar fashion, there are other sites within the Gaza which Israel want to control. Which means that even if there is a ceasefire agreement for next 60 days, Israel would unfrequently continue airstrikes people in Gaza, and they would be controlling the movement of the people. So again, it could be a kind of a suspension of genocide for 60 days, but again, they would resume it because the broader picture is that the Netanyahu, Israel, there has been long-hand plan to expand Israel. They don't have their official map, and for a very obvious reason that they have to expand their territories. More particularly, if Gaza is emptified, the next is going to be West Bank because they have to remove all hostilities around the East Jerusalem for religious reasons, because they believe their so-called Messiah is going to arrive there, and unless they remove these hostilities and they create a bigger chaos, control more and more territories in the Middle East, that cannot happen. So again, the bigger picture is the ideological agenda where Donald Trump is in sync with the evangelical Christians and Zionists.
Javed Rana, thank you for joining us on the program today. It was a pleasure listening to your analysis.
The growing tide of anti-Israel sentiments. What you see behind me is just tip of the iceberg of what is happening in the country. More than half of $52 billion black CIA budget is spent on espionage network in Pakistan. How would you handle it?
The US has looked upon Pakistan as an ally at one point and then as an enemy at the same time.
That is going to be the first legal reason on the basis of which he is going to be instantly ousted by the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
Joining us live, Javed Rana, who's an expert on politics and geo-strategic issues.
In the world politics, which is not being driven by any moral principle, it is being driven by the hard geo-strategic realities. In a broader picture, more countries would aspire to have nuclear weapons.